I was sitting at my kitchen counter in Boise, sipping lukewarm coffee, when I opened the video message that would end my marriage. There she was, Linda, my wife of 18 years, smiling through the screen like she was starring in a vacation commercial. She tilted a champagne glass, showed off a diamond bracelet that easily cost thousands, and gave the camera a smug little wink. "I'm staying with Greg now," she said. "I already emptied our retirement account." Behind her wasn't her sister's modest condo in Portland. As she'd told me, it was a luxury hotel suite, one I'd never seen before. Certainly not one we ever stayed in. For a moment, I didn't feel rage. I didn't shout. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at the screen, at the woman I had spent nearly 2 decades building a life with, laughing as she dismantled it in under a minute. I was 46, a systems consultant who spent his career catching inconsistencies in data, misalignments, anomalies, warning signs. And I had seen them at home for months, extended weekend trips, credit card charges at restaurants she never mentioned, and that faraway look in her eyes when she smiled at her phone. She thought she'd won. But I had already prepared for this exact moment, and she had no idea what I was about to do next. Linda and I had always been opposites. She was fire and flash, I was order and structure. When we met at 28, she was working in pharmaceutical sales with a knack for charming everyone in the room. I was building back-end systems for a regional credit union. She said I grounded her. I thought she added color to my life. "You plan," she used to say. "I live." And for a while, that balance worked. While she breezed through parties and networking events, I stayed up late analyzing our budget. I maxed out our Roth IRAs, invested in growth funds, and bought our home when interest rates hit rock bottom. I had spreadsheets for everything, from mortgage amortizations to grocery spending. She didn't care about the numbers, just that she could still book weekend getaways and buy designer handbags on sale. It wasn't that Linda was careless. She just didn't want to deal with the boring stuff, especially the money. She'd sign anything I put in front of her, as long as the lifestyle stayed comfortable. That comfort began to crack 5 years ago. It started with a $3,000 charge on a credit card from a local jeweler. It wasn't our anniversary. Wasn't near her birthday. "It's for my mom," she said without blinking. Her mom visited a few months later, no bracelet in sight. Then came the new clothes, the late nights at work, and the text messages that lit up her phone with a grin I hadn't seen aimed at me in years. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I did what I do best. I prepared. 3 years ago, when I signed a major consulting contract with a cybersecurity firm called Cloudfield Systems, I created a limited liability company, LLC, to separate personal and business income for tax purposes. That was the excuse. The real reason, I wanted a safe zone. A place to move assets if the house of cards I was starting to suspect came tumbling down. Using that LLC, I slowly began restructuring our finances. On paper, we had a shared retirement account, her name on every form, but I rerouted 70% of the funds into a set of accounts owned by the business, accounts she legally signed off on but never once monitored. I kept it clean, legal, transparent, just not obvious. 8 months ago, I noticed small transfers vanishing from our joint checking account. At first it was 100 here, 200 there. Then came the 900 dinners, $2,000 hotel charges, and what looked like a 500 boutique clothing spree. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "Online shopping," she said. "You're always working." I needed to feel like myself. Last month her curiosity turned financial. She asked pointed questions. How much is in our retirement again? How fast can we access it? Have you updated the beneficiaries recently? She claimed she was just thinking about the future. I didn't say a word, but I noticed the new tennis bracelet on her wrist that I certainly hadn't bought. That was when I moved the remaining funds, what I hadn't already protected, and updated every document I could. Beneficiaries, authorization requirements, access controls. I made it all airtight. So when that video message came in, with her giggling beside a man named Greg, bragging about cashing out our retirement, I wasn't shocked. I was ready. As the sun dipped behind the boys' foothills, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the file I'd quietly assembled over the last 4 months. Copies of account statements, transaction logs, authorization forms, legal documents, everything meticulously ordered. Linda had always laughed off my over-planning. Now, those same boring habits were about to become the difference between her new life of champagne and diamonds, and a very rude awakening. She didn't just empty the wrong account, she woke up the wrong man. The morning after Linda's glittery betrayal, I made my first call before my second cup of coffee. Boys First Credit Union, Fraud Department, how can I help you? My name is Charles Weller, I said calmly. My wife has attempted to liquidate our joint retirement account without my knowledge or consent. I need to report unauthorized access. There was a pause, then the tone on the other end shifted like a gear snapping into drive. Yes, sir. Let's begin the fraud report. I'll also place a freeze on the account pending investigation. As she spoke, I watched the cursor blink on the divorce petition I'd started drafting months ago. I had hoped I'd never need it, but now, the time had come to finish what I had prepared. Within an hour, the bank account was frozen. The fraud report had been filed. The wheels of accountability were officially in motion. By noon, I'd finalized the divorce documents, attached a copy of Linda's recorded confession, her own video, and emailed it all to my lawyer, Daniel Green. That afternoon, I made another call, this time to Jack Holbrook, a forensic accountant I'd once worked with on a corporate embezzlement case. I need help tracing some financial activity, I said, and I need it fully documented. No room for interpretation? I'm on it, Jack replied. Send me what you have. By the next day, Jack had compiled the first wave of findings. Charles, he said, flipping through a thick binder during our meeting at his downtown office, you've been getting siphoned for nearly a year. I leaned forward. How much? 87,000, give or take. He slid a printout across the desk. Most of it's gone to high-end retail luxury dining, and cash withdrawals just under the notification threshold. But 20 grand went somewhere else. Here. He pointed to a string of transfers into a separate account I didn't recognize. It was under the name of Greg Stanton, age 41, regional director at an audio tech firm called Sonadec. This guy's not new to this, Jack added. He's been involved with at least 2 other married women, both in sales, both with access to large joint accounts. I sat back, stunned. So it wasn't just an affair. No, Jack said quietly. It was a setup, a pattern. This man finds women with access to money, woos them, then helps them drain their accounts and vanish. But you're the first one to catch it in time. The realization hit like ice water. Linda hadn't just fallen for someone new. She had been used, groomed, manipulated, and maybe, just maybe, she had known it all along. Still, that didn't excuse what she did to me, or to our future. With Jack's documentation in hand, I returned to Daniel. He studied the data like a surgeon planning an operation. This changes everything, he said. This isn't just a betrayal. It's criminal. We have enough to refer this to the DA or use it as leverage in the divorce settlement. Let's start with leverage, I replied. But be ready to escalate. Within days, we served Linda the divorce papers. Her first reaction wasn't anger, it was confusion. The accounts were locked, the funds were inaccessible, and her messages started flooding in. Text after text. Why can't I access the retirement account? The bank says there's a fraud report. Did you do this? We need to talk. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to Daniel and Jack. 3 days later, she showed up at my door, mascara smudged, wrinkled blouse. And for the first time in years, no pretense. What did you do? She demanded. I opened the door calmly. I protected what was mine. What you tried to steal? She tried to deflect, to charm, even to cry. But I'd seen the video. I'd read the transaction logs. I'd heard her laugh as she poured our future into someone else's hands. You forged my signature, I said. That's a felony. And now the courts will decide how deep this goes. Her face twisted, her tone turned sharp. You'd have nothing without me. I didn't flinch. And yet, here I am, with most of our assets safe, with the law on my side, and with receipts. Linda. She left that afternoon. But the battle, that was only beginning. 2 days after Linda stormed out of my house, I walked into Daniel Green's law office, carrying Jack Holbert's forensic report tucked beneath my arm like a weapon. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. This is bigger than a messy divorce, Daniel said after scanning the pages. We're looking at structured financial misconduct, forgery, and aiding and abetting. And this Greg Stanton character, he's not just a homewrecker, he's a serial predator. Daniel laid out 3 legal options. 1, use the information for a more favorable divorce settlement. 2, press criminal charges against both Linda and Greg. Or 3, use the threat of both to gain full restitution and control over all remaining assets. I want to stop this guy, I said. Not just for me. I don't think Linda's his first victim, and she sure won't be the last. Daniel nodded. Let's start by gathering strength. We'll reach out to Greg's previous targets. If we can show a pattern, it strengthens both your leverage and a potential criminal case. Within days, Jack had tracked down 2 of Greg's former partners. Women who had, like Linda, been charmed into draining their savings for the illusion of love and exclusivity. One was from Arizona, the other from Washington. Both were stunned to hear someone else had lived through the same trap. They agreed to share financial records and written statements. Their stories followed the same rhythm: whirlwind romance, financial vulnerability, slow detachment, and then ghosting, right around the time the money ran dry. Classic parasitic behavior masked in silk shirts and confident smiles. Meanwhile, Daniel drafted a formal notice to Linda's attorney. We had evidence of premeditated financial fraud and intended to pursue charges unless a full settlement, including restitution of the diverted $87,000, was reached. We also required full control over the remaining retirement accounts, property division in my favor, and 0 spousal support. It was a legal sledgehammer, and it landed with precision. The next few days were quiet, almost eerily so. Then the messages started coming in again. This time they weren't angry, they were pleading. I need to talk to you, Charles. It's about Greg. Please, just one call. I didn't answer. That Friday, as I left my office downtown, I spotted her leaning against a column outside the parking garage. Her hair pulled back, her tone less venom, more wariness. He lied to me, she said as she fell into step beside me. About everything. I kept walking. That seems to be a pattern. I thought he cared. Then I found out about the other women. One of them called me. He's done this before, used them, drained them. I was next. I stopped and faced her. You were already in? Whether he played you or not, you stole from me, lied to me, forged my name. I didn't know it would go this far, she whispered. I shook my head slowly. You knew enough to record yourself laughing while draining our future. She looked down. I'm sorry. But I wasn't looking for apologies. I was building a case. By Monday, Linda's lawyer agreed to every term in our proposed settlement. She'd return the remaining funds, at least those she still had access to. She'd relinquish claims to the house, the business accounts, and all assets tied to my LLC. And she'd cooperate in the fraud investigation against Greg Stanton in exchange for reduced civil liability. The judge signed the agreement within 2 weeks. But the real win came when Daniel handed over the full dossier to the district attorney. Greg Stanton's name, finances, and manipulation tactics were now part of an official criminal investigation. And for the first time in months, I felt like the world had tilted back into balance. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when I stepped into the courthouse, papers in hand, suit freshly pressed. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. After months of preparation, betrayal, and strategy, this was simply the final step in a long overdue process. Across the aisle, I spotted Linda and Greg seated together, but they didn't look like the polished pair from the video Linda had sent me. She looked worn, dark circles under her eyes, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Greg, on the other hand, sat stiffly in his chair, jaw clenched, arms crossed, clearly irritated at having to be there at all. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a no-nonsense gaze, called our case to order. Daniel stood first. Your Honor, we are submitting documented evidence of financial misconduct, he began, placing a thick folder on the bench. This includes unauthorized transfers, forged signatures, and personal asset redirection to a third party, Mr. Stanton, who is present today. The judge flipped through the file with methodical interest. She paused at the still image of Linda's video, the one where she toasted to her new life with a glass of champagne while announcing she'd emptied our retirement. And the bank statements. The judge asked. Daniel confirmed, as well as forensic analysis tracing nearly $87,000 to Mr. Stanton's personal account. We've also added testimony from 2 prior women who experienced nearly identical financial losses after relationships with the same individual. I glanced at Greg. His smirk had vanished. The judge addressed him directly. Mr. Stanton, the evidence before me suggests a clear pattern of predatory financial behavior. While this civil matter focuses on asset division, I'm referring this file to the district attorney's office for criminal review. Fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation are not matters this court takes lightly. Greg's attorney leaned over, whispering frantically. But the damage was done. Linda's face turned pale. She looked at Greg like she didn't recognize him anymore. Maybe she didn't. The judge turned to Linda next. Mrs. Whittaker. She paused, correcting herself. Mrs. Walters, this court finds substantial evidence that you acted with knowledge in the attempt to misappropriate marital assets. As such, I am awarding Mr. Walters sole ownership of the contested property, business assets, and retirement funds. Furthermore, any restitution of misused funds will be enforced under penalty of law. Linda didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, as if absorbing the weight of every wrong turn she'd taken. The gavel struck, case closed. 6 months later, I was living in a new downtown condo overlooking the Boys River. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was peaceful. Greg Stanton. He was indicted after 3 former partners, including Linda, testified under oath. Between the bank records, Jack's forensic breakdown, and personal accounts from other women, the DA had what they called an airtight case. He now faced multiple charges, including financial fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. If convicted, he'd be looking at real prison time, not just a slap on the wrist. Linda avoided jail by cooperating, but she didn't walk away untouched. She was ordered to make restitution payments for the money she had funneled to Greg. She lost the house, her job, and any claim to my retirement. Last I heard, she moved back to Oregon to live with her mother and work in entry-level sales again. I wasn't bitter. Honestly, I felt resolved, like closing a book you never thought would end. I'd even started seeing someone, Andrea, a project manager from a consulting firm I'd partnered with. She was smart, independent, and refreshingly direct. We were taking things slow, each of us careful not to rush into something new just because it felt comfortable. I still kept one photo from my marriage. Linda and I on our honeymoon in Santa Fe. Not out of sentimentality, but as a quiet reminder, trust should be earned continuously, not given blindly. The money. I recovered most of it, not all, but enough to build again. And this time I was building smarter, with clearer boundaries and my eyes wide open. The sun was setting over Boys, casting long shadows across my living room wall. I stood by the window, cradling a mug of coffee, not because I needed the caffeine, but because the warmth reminded me I was still here, still standing, still rebuilding. 6 months ago, everything I thought was stable collapsed in seconds. My marriage, my finances, my sense of trust. But sometimes when everything falls apart, what you're left with is the raw truth. And that's where real clarity begins. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it's wrapped in silk sheets and whispered promises. Sometimes it laughs through your phone while waving a champagne glass in a hotel suit you didn't know existed. And sometimes it comes from the very person you once trusted with your future. But I also learned something else: silence is not weakness. Preparation is not paranoia, and dignity doesn't shout, it simply endures. I didn't fight fire with fire. I didn't scream, I didn't seek revenge. I prepared. I documented, I protected myself. And in doing so, I reclaimed something that betrayal couldn't touch: my peace. To the men and women watching this, especially those of you in your golden years, let me tell you something plainly: it's never too late to safeguard your future. Whether you're 45 or 75, whether you've been married 2 years or 20, you deserve transparency, respect, and protection. Don't apologize for asking questions. Don't feel guilty for setting boundaries. And if something feels off, don't brush it aside. Your instincts may be the quiet voice that saves everything you've built. I didn't just walk away from Linda and her lies. I walked toward something better. A life I could build on my own terms, surrounded by people who value honesty over image. I've since expanded my consulting business, started volunteering with a local nonprofit, and yes, I even took a solo road trip through the Pacific Northwest. No itinerary. Just me, a map, and the freedom to go wherever I pleased. And you know what? It felt good to breathe again. To not walk on eggshells. To not question every laugh or late-night text. Linda and I no longer speak. She made her choices and I made mine. Greg Stanton is facing charges, and justice, however slowly, grinds forward. I don't need an apology. I don't need closure. I already have both, in the form of a quiet morning, a stable savings account, and the certainty that I did everything the right way. So if you've been betrayed or hurt, or blindsided, know this: you are not alone. And you are not powerless. Prepare. Protect yourself. And when the time comes, respond with grace and resolve. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever faced something similar or know someone who has, share it in the comments below. Let others know they're not alone either. And if you found strength or insight in this story, consider subscribing to the channel. We share stories not just of pain, but of perseverance. Not just of loss, but of rising again. Because life doesn't end when someone walks away. Sometimes that's exactly when it truly begins. Take care of yourselves. Stay wise, stay steady, and always, always protect what matters most. A few months later, I found myself sitting across from Andrea in a quiet booth at a local steakhouse. The lighting was soft, the clink of silverware and low conversation around us offering just enough background to make things feel normal. And after everything that happened, that kind of peace felt like a luxury. Andrea wasn't like anyone I'd dated before. A project manager in her mid-40s, sharp as a tack, with her own consulting firm and zero interest in playing games. We met through a mutual friend at a business conference, and had kept things deliberately slow. We both carried the weight of past betrayals, the kind that makes you double, check motives and hesitate before trusting again. But there was something refreshing about our connection. No performance. No masks. Just two people sitting across from each other, willing to show their scars without shame. As she laughed at a story I was telling, something about a botched server migration from back in the day, I felt something I hadn't in years grounded. Not in spite of what I'd been through, but because of it. Linda, my ex-wife, was a closed chapter now. After the court hearing, she took a plea deal and agreed to pay restitution. She avoided jail, likely thanks to her cooperation against Greg Stanton. But she was left with a tarnished reputation, mounting debt, and the bitter realization that the man she risked everything for had been targeting her from the start. Greg didn't fare so well. With multiple testimonies, financial records, and corporate violations stacked against him. He was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and financial exploitation. He's serving time now, ironically in a facility not far from where Linda and I had once taken a weekend getaway. Sometimes I wonder if Linda really understood what she'd done. Whether she ever reflected on how casually she dismantled nearly 2 decades of life together. But I stopped needing that answer. Some questions don't require closure, just distance. My retirement accounts, once on the brink of ruin, had not only recovered but grown stronger. I'd moved everything into a trust structure, with backup protections and clearly outlined directives. And I made sure to update my will, my power of attorney, and even added a clause about digital asset access. I wasn't just preparing for betrayal anymore. I was preparing for peace of mind. My consulting business took off during this time, partially because I poured myself into work during the divorce, but also because clarity has a way of sharpening your focus. My clients appreciated my renewed sense of discipline and practicality. I appreciated being able to work with purpose again. I also started speaking occasionally at financial wellness seminars for retirees and older professionals. Nothing flashy, just quiet sessions on protecting your digital and financial life. Turns out, people don't want grandstanding. They want someone who's lived it, survived it, and came out smarter on the other side. Andrea reached across the table and gently touched my hand. "You seem different lately," she said. "Lighter," I smiled. "That's because I'm not carrying someone else's chaos anymore." And it was true. For the first time in a long while, my life felt like mine again. Not built around someone else's demands, not spent walking on eggshells, and certainly not driven by fear of what might be lurking in someone else's phone. As we finished dinner and stepped out into the cool evening air, I realized something simple but profound: heartbreak doesn't have to define your story. Sometimes it just redirects it. And if you're lucky, or maybe just patient enough, you find peace not at the end of revenge or vindication, but in the quiet spaces where you remember who you were before the storm, and who you've become because of it. The sun had dipped below the boys' skyline as I stood on my condo's balcony, a glass of iced tea in hand, watching the city lights blink to life one by one. There was no bitterness in me anymore, just quiet understanding. I had lost a marriage, yes, but I had regained something far more valuable: my clarity, my peace, and most of all, my self-respect. There's a strange kind of freedom in realizing you can survive what you once feared would break you. Linda's betrayal hurt, no question, but it didn't define me. It refined me, and through it all, I learned that trust is not just about giving someone your word. It's about protecting your future, even from the ones closest to you. Sometimes, the people you trust most will disappoint you in ways you never saw coming. But that doesn't mean you failed. It means you felt deeply, gave fully, and now you rise smarter. Pain doesn't always leave a scar, it can leave a compass. If this story moved you or reminded you of a time you had to rebuild your life, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in second chances and quiet strength, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and join our community, where real stories remind us that it's never too late to start over.